Hello, friends, and welcome to the Inks and Issues podcast. This is issue 1, Origins. I'm your host, Jonah Gregory.
And I am your other host, Kieran Bennett.
So what we're going to do, rather than covering the latest news of comic books and keeping up with the current issues of what's coming out, what we're trying to do is more of a book club situation where we kind of take a look at either books we really enjoyed and going back and seeing how they hold up, or maybe one both of us were interested in and seeing if they're any good. They could be anywhere from stuff that just came out to, who knows, maybe we'll take a look at some of those original comics from the Golden Age. Like, who knows? We can do whatever we want. It's our podcast.
Yeah, it's our podcast, and literally at the moment, no one listens, so no one cares.
This is our test bed to see how it goes. We are planning on having guest hosts, so we already have a few people lined up.
That'll be cool.
We already have way too long of a list to get through, so we probably have the next 36 episodes that we could pick from.
I am very excited to read more comics than is really responsible for me to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the first question, Jonah, is how you doing?
Pretty good. My wife Brittany and I just recorded a guest episode of Podcast, which is
really good.
Which is basically just an episode where Sam and Veronica from the Geekly community are just kind of talking, and it's really entertaining. They're both very funny and entertaining people. So
very funny. They
just threw a tweet out that was like, "Hey, do you want to do a guest one?" to like everybody, and I guess I was the first one to respond, so I got to do the first guest episode, which I was really happy about.
Yeah, no, I listened to that today. I was like, that was really funny. I really enjoyed it. It was several of my questions were answered.
Good. I'm happy to have answered them. Yeah, we had a good time. I haven't recorded a podcast in a while. I have written for Sayer, but that's even been a while, which is coming back. It's hit its first and second stretch goal. Maybe not second yet. Close, though. Pretty close. So let's get into our own backgrounds regarding comic history. Since this is our Origins episode, I figured we could kind of get into our own how we got into comics a little bit before we get into the main event, which will be Batman Year One by Frank Miller. So why don't you tell us a little bit about like what got you into comics?
Batman.
Oh man,
it actually wasn't Batman. It wasn't actually Batman that got me into comics. It was actually this like really small, very like indie superhero called Green Lantern. I don't know if you've heard of him. Yeah. It's a really small deal. It's a shame they've never made a movie from Green Lantern.
That's weird. You'd think they would have by now.
Yeah. I know. You would think like with Ryan Reynolds as maybe the lead. Like I feel like that might be a good idea, but yeah, no, I think some parts of it would be good, but other parts would just be absolute garbage. Anyway, my uncle actually was really into comics, and still is, and he just as like a random gift was like, hey, you're 8 or whatever. Here, have a one issue of Green Lantern, and it was Green Lantern Rebirth #1.
Oh wow!
And I
God,
read
you're young. Holy crap!
Yeah, and I still have it. I still have it. And I read the shit out of that. I read it over and over and over and over again. I loved it. It was so good. Just like the art and like this whole like, suddenly superhero comics weren't like, gee willikers, Batman, we've got to stop the Penguin from poisoning the sharks or whatever. It was like, hello, Carol. I've been dead for 40 years, but here I have this crazy hood and I've killed 6 people. By the way, I'm traveling back in time to restore these jets. And I was like, what? What is happening? I don't understand any of this. And so I read it over and over again, just somehow in the hopes that it would,
somehow make sense.
It would somehow make sense. Yeah. I mean, it never did. But then that basically spawned like a sort of like interest in comics. And so I ended up, getting comics out from my local library. But I mean, I never bought any and I never subscribed to anything because I was so poor. But then I went to the one comics convention here in New Zealand and I just so happened to find Green Lantern Rebirth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I bought that shit right then and there. I think it was like $120. I did not give a shit. I wanted to know what happened at the end of the story.
You had to know what the hell was going on.
I had to know. And so I bought it. And so because I bought that, my aunt did the same thing as my uncle and was like, here, have a random issue of, I think it was Green Lantern 43 from the Jeff Johns run, which is
so they're like, you like that green guy, right? Here you go.
Yeah. He's the same person, right? And so I read that, and from then I found a comic shop in Auckland, and I went and bought 44, 45, the whole run of Blackest Night, picked up Green Lantern Corps, and then they were kind of like, you don't have to come in here and buy the comics individually. You can just subscribe, and we'll put one aside for you. And I think that was like 7 or 8 years ago, and that the rest, as they say, is total history. I now have in excess of like 500 single issues.
Of Green Lantern or in general.
Admittedly, half of that is Green Lantern.
Okay.
Yeah. I have all of Jeff Johns' run in trade or single, multiple like old crossovers like 0 Hour and things like that.
So you're saying we will be covering some Green Lantern at some point on this show, is what you're trying to tell me?
At the very least, we will be doing an issue of potentially just One Punch Cast, where it's just me furiously masturbating and talking about Green Lantern Rebirth for like an hour, because I just love that series so much. Like, objectively, it's probably not that good, but like at the same time, it's just like the nostalgia is just overbearing for that series.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So how did you get your start?
Okay,
in comics,
it's kind of crazy. So I read a lot of comic strips as a kid, like the Sunday papers, that kind of stuff, and would actually do the thing where you cut them out and like paste them into a little. I had like a 3-ring binder that I would paste them into, and just would collect comic strips. And then I became obsessed with Garfield, which admittedly, isn't great, but for a little kid, it was hilarious. I mean, he hates Mondays. I mean,
Garfield has his moments. Like, it's...
But my oldest brother, because I'm from a pretty big family, he actually in high school, one of his best friends' dad owned the local paper, and he drew comic strips. So he was like, hey, we could print these comic strips for you. So he started drawing comics and collected comics. So he kind of was the one who got me into comics in the first place. And he had a lot of reprints that Marvel was doing back then of their Golden Age and Silver Age stuff. So I was actually I was allowed to kind of check out from his personal library, because he was kind of a stickler. He didn't want them destroyed, because he is 8 years older than me, so there's a pretty big age gap there. The Fantastic Four reprints. So I read the original run of Fantastic Four, which was a pretty decent run. Like, it introduced, the first one, the famous cover with the giant monster coming out and all of them like doing their powers against him, and then it introduces Mole Man and Doctor Doom, and eventually it gets really crazy, and Doctor Doom is like harassing Stan Lee at one point. They wrote themselves into the comic in a couple parts, like as breaking the fourth wall. So they were doing that from the beginning, essentially. Deadpool didn't invent that. I'm sorry, but he didn't. And so I read a lot of those old ones, and then I got really into Ninja Turtles, the cartoon, and then my brother was
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
He was like, hey, did you know that was a comic? And I was like... And he had a few of the old original like black and white Eastman and Laird. So I read those like 2 issues he had over and over, and I had, like with you, I had no idea what was going on. It was like the weirdest stuff in the middle of a story arc. Because he was an artist, he would buy things based on how interesting he thought the artwork was sometimes. And he would also buy a lot of the art of type books of movies, like the Dark Crystal and stuff like that had really cool designs on the characters. So I flipped through a lot of those books as a kid. Then, as a teenager, got into Spider-Man, because I had a friend who was obsessed with Spider-Man and the X-Men, and that's the same time those 90s cartoons were coming out of X-Men and Spider-Man that are like the ones everyone's like, those were so good. I'm like, they were at the time. I will give you that. I cannot speak to how well they hold up. I'm not trying to badmouth them, but I have not gone back and watched them, and I'm kind of afraid to.
Yeah.
And then I kind of got out of comics for years, and the thing that brought me back into it was HeroClix, of all things, because I play a lot of board games. And when the first run of HeroClix was happening, there was a new comic book store in my mall. And I kind of got to become friends with those guys because I was in there all the time. Well, it turned out one of the owners and his brother, who was a co-owner, there was, I think, 3 people that owned that one. He was the guy who was starting Emerald City Comic Con in Seattle as a group. They had started that, which has become a huge con. So I'm like kind of friends with the guys that do that con. It's really weird. It's like when they see me at the con, they're like, "Hey!" And it's like,
oh, hey,
it's
Jonah,
really cool.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and at the same time, I was kind of getting into webcomics.
You enjoying the con that we've put together?
Yeah, exactly. It's a very bizarre
Just
thing.
This little thing.
It was very little when I first started going. So like the second or third year was around when my brother, former comic strip artist, was like, well, you've been working on writing stuff. Like, do you have any ideas for a comic book? I've been wanting to get back into art. So I actually was doing an indie comic book with my brother for a few years called Here There Be Robots, which is about... so these aliens come to Earth, right? And they're peaceful, and they want to meet humans and make peaceful contact. But at the same time, these evil robots on Earth want to take over everything. And they accidentally, as the aliens like crash land into their base, they accidentally trigger an explosion that destroys the Earth and opens like a wormhole that sucks them back in time. So they're in the golden age of pirates, these robots and aliens. So we did, I think, 4 or 5 issues, but he could only do, like a page a week, and that's, a 20 to 30 page comic. So we'd get out about an issue a year. It was a very slow process. We do have a trade paperback, which may still be purchasable online. I don't actually know. So yeah, I did that for a while. Somewhere along the line.
So when are we going to be reviewing that?
You could review it. I think that'd be a little awkward for me.
So it's like
there was a period,
writing is so hackneyed, really overblown.
So there was a period in like the early 2000s where I actually got to meet a bunch of really cool comic creators because I was at a lot of I was at Emerald City, and a lot of them knew Jim, who was the guy that founded it, that I knew. So it was like I actually got to meet Tim Sale and talk to him a bunch of times, which is like one of my wife's favorite artists, and like I'm a huge fan of his too. So I've kind of been in and out of it. Kind of stopped doing the comic because Jeremy got too busy. Now I'm just kind of got back into him in the last couple of years, and I've still kind of been back and forth. So I'm like, I really want to get back into him again, which was my reason for wanting to do a podcast, so I have an excuse. All right, so do we want to get into Batman?
Yeah, for sure.
Batman, what's your history with Batman? Have you read much Batman?
Yeah, I've see, I don't know. I mean, if we're comparing to like general kind of comics levels, yeah, I've probably read a decent amount of Batman. But if we're comparing to like my Green Lantern levels, nah, not that much.
You can't really compare anything to that. I don't know if that's possible.
No. No, I've actually not read Year One prior to this, but I've read like The Long Halloween, Arkham Asylum, a couple of the Joker trades, and like the Dark Knight Returns and stuff like that, and then obviously like some various sort of collections of single issues like collected together, like trade paperbacks and stuff like that. But no, my first exposure to Batman was actually probably Batman of the Future, the cartoon.
Batman Beyond? Is that what the...
Batman Beyond.
Did it have a different name over there?
Yeah, actually, no, it probably did, because now that I actually say Batman Beyond, I'm pretty sure it was Batman of the Future on TV.
Okay.
Yeah. Is
this the whole Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles thing all over again for England?
Probably, yeah. No, so that was probably my very first exposure to Batman, because my mum and I used to watch the Saturday morning cartoons all the time, and Batman of the Future was a really big one for us, and we would watch that one all the time.
I wanted to hate that show, and it was too good.
It is like, obviously going back and watching it like again now, it's not actually that great, but at the time, man, it was hot
like
stuff.
It sounded so stupid when they announced it, and because I'm like a cynical teenager, or maybe even getting close to 20 at this point, and
that's the worst age,
and I'm just like, what do these guys know? And it turns out they did a pretty good job with it.
Yeah, they did a pretty good job. So that was probably my very first exposure to Batman. And then obviously there was like a Justice League cartoon and a bunch of other Batman cartoons and stuff like that. And then that just kind of grew into comics.
Yeah. So I actually watched a lot of reruns of the Adam West era stuff when I was a kid, and I absolutely love it. And then I went through the period of thinking it was so stupid, and then I watched it again like as a grown-up, and I'm like, this show is brilliant. I'm not even exaggerating. They made a show that is exactly like the comics were back then. Like, the way people talk is so stupid. Yeah. It's exactly like they matched it note for note. They knew what they were doing, and it is super
for better
entertaining.
Or for worse.
Exactly, and it's so entertaining. Like, you can even just go into it thinking of it as a parody if you want to, and you'll still enjoy it. And it's legitimately pretty funny in some parts because of the overacting. Some of the jokes actually come through.
There's like a certain generation of like those golden age comics where you're kind of like you're reading the dialogue and you think to yourself, have any of these writers actually ever spoken to a real human being? Nobody talks like this.
Yes.
Nobody talks like this.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it is hard to go back and read that stuff sometimes, which is why I kind of want to cover some of it.
Yeah. And as a small child, I just want to really quickly say here, the spelling of jail as Gaol super fucked me up for like the longest time. I was like, is it a different word in the 50s or is it a different word in the United States? But I didn't want to say it out loud in case people made fun of me. And I'm like, what's a gale?
What are you referencing? I don't know.
In old cotton, don't do this to me. In old comics, they would spell jail. They would spell jail as Gaol.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know why. It's just an old spelling, and it just like it screwed with my head so hard because I didn't know if I was reading it incorrectly or like where is Superman taking all these bad guys? Why isn't he taking them to jail like a good, responsible person? What is wrong with you?
I'm going to have to research this because you may be insane. I don't know yet. We don't know each other that well yet. Huh. Yeah. But then I got into Batman. I think year one might have been one of the earliest ones I read when I kind of got back into comics when I was doing the cons and stuff. But there was a period where I realized I'm buying like 90% Batman and nothing else, so maybe I should branch out a little bit. I have read a lot of Batman comics, and some of my, I think, I have to double check, but I want to say some of my Tim Sale, Jeff Loeb stuff is signed by Tim Sale because of getting to meet him at the cons. I know at least some of it is because Brittany would like go get in his line. Like right as the con was opening since we were there before it opened. So Batman year one. So what we want to do is kind of go through the story and not just be like, it was good or it was bad. Because that doesn't make for a very interesting show. You know. So you took some pretty extensive notes. So do you want to run us through the plot?
Yes. Well, I guess the kind of the overall kind of overarching thing is that like it's sort of in like, what was it, 1980... well before I was born. 1987, yeah. So 1987, Batman 404 to 407. Mm-hmm. There was basically kind of this like movement to refresh a bunch of like of their older superheroes like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman.
Right.
And basically Frank Miller kind of put up his hand and was like, "Hey, I can redo the origin story of Batman, but you know, there's no point in redoing the origin story of Batman because it's so classic and it feeds so much into who Batman is as a character." And so instead, this is...
Unlike a lot of the other ones, it actually still worked. Like, a lot of those really old ones don't work at all at this point in the 80s.
No, they make no sense.
To put it in context, this was post him doing the Daredevil, like, taking this character nobody cared about or had really heard of and making it this phenomenon.
So this was essentially a retelling and adding on of the Batman origin story. It is, you know, putting Batman and also his relationship with at the time Lieutenant Gordon in kind of a new light. So I guess we can just kind of rip straight into what happens at the start. And so basically we open on Lieutenant Gordon arriving into Gotham by train. He's talking about how just what an absolute hellhole Gotham is and how glad he is that Barbara, his wife, is arriving by plane. Right. And
to mask how crappy Gotham City is.
Yeah, Yeah. He's like, she'll never know how absolutely crap it is if she comes by plane, even though she's gonna fucking live here for the next 20 years. She'll just never know. I'd say like these like first few shots I really liked because I was really hooked on the art like as soon as I started reading it because I thought it was such a good Gotham look.
Yes,
you know?
It's art by David Mazzucchelli, and amazing noir style artwork throughout the whole book. I love it.
Yeah. There's some real like really cool moments in the book where I'm just like, oh, that is actually like really cool to look at. So no, like really fantastic job on his part the whole way through. I don't know. I just briefly talk about the art. I don't know if it was in the back of yours, but there were some extra pages in the back of the version that I bought from Comixology, where they actually talked about when they first did it, they had to be really careful with the colors because they were printing it on newsprint. So there's only a certain range of colors that they could use. So when they went to re-release it, they had another colorist come in and basically repaint all of the panels to take advantage of a broader range of colors again. Which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Mine has a lot of stuff in the back, but I don't know if it had that. It had some really interesting stuff by Mazzucchelli, like about his history with Batman and loving the old, like the classic stuff, and how he was like, when you make them too realistic, it can kind of ruin the character. That's what he was a little worried about. But he was like, "Oh, this script is good, so yeah, let's do it."
yeah. So no. I thought that art was really fantastic, and it really fit like this vision of Gotham City. So after Lieutenant Gordon gets off the train, he meets Lieutenant Flass from the Gotham Police Department, who I believe I have labeled here as a total fuckboy. I hated this guy as soon as he showed up.
Yeah,
he's just like,
well, his first thing is like he pushes like a Hare Krishna guy out of the way and calls him a skinhead, and then he's like, he's like, I'm gonna call you Jimmy, and Gordon's like, what the hell?
I don't even know you. Who are you? Yeah. Stay away from me. But it's just like he was so like telegraphed as like, I'm a complete asshole. Yeah. Do not trust me.
Exactly.
May as well have just like stuck a massive like neon sign on his face.
He might as well have had like a swastika like tattooed on his forehead or something like Charles Manson.
Essentially, yeah. I think like one of the first things he says to him is like, "Hey, Jimmy, you'll probably work out how the city runs soon enough."
Yeah.
And Jim's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Oh, here. Welcome to Gotham, Jimmy. It's not as bad as it looks, especially if you're a cop.
Yeah.
Cops got it made in Gotham."
Right. That's like,
and it's like
2 lines in or something.
Yeah, and it's basically been like, "Welcome to Gotham. We're all super corrupt." Right.
The subtlety of Frank Miller's writing. Right?
Yeah.
That was actually the thing going back. I'm like, Frank Miller has done some stuff that is considered amazing, changed comics, but like he's kind of become such this curmudgeon. Does his old stuff hold up? I sure hope so. Going back to this book.
Yeah.
But one of the things I liked right away in this was immediately we see the parallels between Gordon and Bruce Wayne. He's on the train, and then as he's saying, like, I wish, or, I'm glad she's flying in, it switches to the plane where Bruce is flying in and going, oh man, from up here, you wouldn't think this city is such a shithole.
Yeah. I think that's actually really good and kind of ties into what happens later when Bruce goes out to like recon and like be Batman for or like air quotes be Batman for the first time. So yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit when it comes up. Lieutenant Gordon. People want to say Commissioner Gordon.
Right.
Lieutenant Gordon goes and meets with Commissioner Loeb.
Yeah.
Loeb. Yeah, Loeb.
I'm assuming that's a Jeff Loeb reference, but I don't know where he would have fallen in the, like where he was working or on what books he would have been working on at the time. But he's done that was what I so much, Batman and Superman stuff since then. It's like I assume it's a reference to him, but I forgot to look it up.
And so he meets Commissioner Loeb, and Jim's like, I'm ready to do my best work. And there's like kind of an implication that he's done some really shitty stuff in the past. And Loeb's like, hey, I'm totally into that because I'm also an asshole.
Right.
You don't need to be honest. You don't need to be, you don't have to carry yourself with integrity. And
they kind of imply he like beat up another cop for being a dickhead or something at some point.
Yeah. Like it's never really like implied exactly, or like never really stated what it is, but it's kind of implied that he did something by Gotham standards, totally fine,
right?
But by Jim standards is not okay.
Yeah.
These first few kind of like pages, because I think like afterwards that he goes out with Flash, and then Flash like gets out, literally beats the shit out of a guy to like get his comb.
Right. He thinks,
and Jim's just like,
he says, he was carrying the switchblade, and Jim's like, yeah, it's a comb, but okay.
Yeah, and then Flash is just like, oh yeah, well, you know, like shit happens, ha 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 ha, and it's like, you're just a sociopath. You're actually just a sociopath.
Right.
And then Jim has a bit of like internal conflict about like, oh my god, I can't believe I brought my pregnant wife to such a crappy place. He and Flash are kind of like, you know, driving around and stuff like that. It's basically just Jim being like, wow, all these people are unbelievably shitty. And they are. They're all just like huge assholes. Which I think it's great. I think it's great that they're all just like, you know, that he has established Gotham City as just like, it's just a shitty city.
Yeah.
You know? I always like when Batman stories and Gotham stories where it's like they're really strong on the fact that Gotham City is not a nice place.
Right. Superman would not live here. It's
no.
By page 6, Gordon's already like, just call me Lieutenant. Like, he's already like, just stop talking.
Yeah,
please.
yeah. It's like, I don't want to be friends. Yeah. I don't want to be friends. You're weird. I mean, we also have a little bit of Bruce training, and I got to be honest. At this point, Bruce is kind of like a bit angsty, and he's just like, oh, there's something missing, Father. I failed you, and I'm just like, we're all just waiting for the bat to fly through the window and turn you into Batman.
Yes. Well, he's like, I have the training and the skill, but not the method. That's what he keeps saying.
That's right.
He karate chops a brick in half and karate kicks a tree down. Like, what?
He's Batman. It's okay fine. Because he knows the pressure points of the tree. Yeah.
I'll allow it.
Okay, so then I think at the sort of like the end kind of the issue, the Aryan fuckboy and the old fuckboy, they're just like, oh, Jim's not playing boy. He doesn't want to be a fuckboy along with the rest of us. We gotta beat him up and make it look like an accident. And then they beat him up
with baseball bats.
But Jim, with baseball bats, yeah. And Jim does a really good job of like holding his own for all of like 2 seconds,
right?
Before, you know, obviously being overwhelmed by like 4 other people. Right. But he realizes immediately who it is.
Oh yeah,
and just doesn't take any shit. He does not take any shit. Like, he immediately afterwards gets into his car, drives to like one of the guys' places, waits for all of them to leave, tails Flash, and just drives him off the fucking road,
right?
And like threatens to shoot him and beats the shit out of him.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
he throws him a bat and then he beats the crap out of him.
He gives him the bat and he's like, come at me, and he still beats him. I loved it. I was just like, you absolute badass.
Yeah. I saw in your notes you called it Jim Gordon Year One, and I've actually heard a lot of people call this book Jim Gordon Year One.
Yeah, it totally is.
So if you like his character, this is actually probably the book that made me like Jim Gordon, because he was always such a like side nothing character in other stuff I had read up to this point, that actually establishes that he's an interesting and complex character. I mean, he's not always a good dude, but he like seems to try.
And so I guess the other really important thing that happens in this issue that I really, really enjoyed is Bruce goes out to the East End to do his like criminal recon, and I feel like it couldn't have gone any worse for him if he'd actively like
goes to,
killed
like,
people.
The red light district from, you know, every terrible 80s movie.
Yeah. Just full of, like,
he might as well have like walked into RoboCop at this point. Like, it's such a terrible neighborhood.
So he gets propositioned by like a 6-year-old, and then the pimp is like gonna beat up the kid, and he's like, hey, why don't you beat me up instead? And he gets like beaten up by like 3 people, stabbed by the child, shot by the police, arrested, crashes the cop car, almost kills the police, just manages to save them, and then just gets away.
And this is how you know it's a Frank Miller book, is because he made Selina Kyle a hooker, and every other character that's beating up Bruce Wayne in this scene is basically a hooker. The man just loves hookers. Like, read everything he's read and you will find there are plenty of hookers in them. And I'm not saying that to disparage any ladies of the night. I'm just saying he just seems to like to put them in his comics. That's all.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, he wrote Sin City, didn't he? And
oh yeah. Yes, he did.
Just about a hooker.
And that's fine. It's just,
yeah.
It's like, oh, he's always written this. Okay, that's Frank Miller.
That's always the way it's been. I made a note here because I really want to talk about it, but I think it's fantastic that he is awful at being Batman at this point. But he is, as I said, I can't imagine how it could have possibly gone worse for him.
Well, he didn't die, so there's that.
no, true. He technically, true. He didn't die, but yeah, like he gets stabbed, like he doesn't help anyone. No one wants his help.
Right.
No one.
That was a big
is
part
at
of it.
all.
The people he's trying to protect is like, that's who stabs him in the leg is the little girl.
Yeah.
So he gets home, he's all bloody, sitting in his giant room, and he's like, well, I could call Alfred to patch me up, but do I even deserve to not die from blood loss?
He's like, I could just sit here in my own blood, and that's what I deserve, because I'm so shitty.
Because he's so sad, because he's like the emo teen.
Yeah. He totally is such an emo teen.
But then he sees the bat. This is where you've been waiting for. Yeah. The last page finally has the bat breakthrough.
That moment of inspiration
where he's like, maybe I could be some sort of Batman.
Man, right? And then that cover, that second issue of him just as the Batman. Very cool, very, very cool cover. I really, really like that second cover.
So issue 2 opens with showing Jim Gordon is like done with all these corrupt cops, basically. Like, they're gonna there's a guy who the writing in the scene was like not as strong. I didn't feel like the crazy guy who's saying random stuff. I'm like, really? But it's the 80s, so I guess like
it's the 80s. You don't have to treat mental illness with any kind of delicacy whatsoever because they're not real, it's the 80s.
Yeah. So basically an entire SWAT team is brought in to like take this one dude down instead of like trying to do anything. So Gordon shows up, puts down his gun, just kind of walks up to the guy and just clocks him and like knocks him out. And so now all the cops hate him even more because he showed them all up. And it just kind of shows like he's actually willing to put his life on the line to help people rather than all these guys who are like just want a payout. But it also has the best maternity shirt I have ever seen, which is Barbara Gordon sitting in a big comfy chair, and she's wearing a shirt that just says baby and has a big arrow pointing at her stomach. Which I had to post that on my Instagram because I was laughing so hard when I saw that. We also see Gordon kind of his training. He's really good at a gun, but he like if I was shooting a real like instead of it being like blam blam blam, how good am I at shooting? He's like, if this were to hit a person, this is what would have happened to them. And if I had hit him up here in the head, I would have had to see his eyes like looking at me like, oh my God, what have you done? And like, so it's like he actually takes this job really seriously, you find out, like, which I thought was a pretty cool scene. Like that could have been done really stupidly where it's just like, look how cool he is because he's good at guns.
It could have been such an excuse to be like, he was a badass in the previous scene. Look, here he is being a badass again. Yeah. Instead, it's like, look, here he is thinking about what he's done like a mature adult. Right. And it's like, oh, yeah, I really like that.
And like, oh, my actions have consequences, and I'm a police officer, and I should be not shooting people in the head if I can avoid it.
Yeah. And when you shoot people in the head, they die.
Right. And then we switch back to Batman, who is still terrible.
God
it's great.
Damn it. He's so crappy.
Yeah, so he jumps down on these like teenagers that are like stealing some TVs. Immediately,
one of them stealing a record player.
Yeah, one of them stealing a turntable.
A turntable and like a giant tube television, which I kind of loved. I know.
So he immediately accidentally knocks one of these kids off like a 20-story up balcony. And has to grab him by the ankle, and then the other guys are just beating the crap out of him. It's like, dude, he's gonna drop your friend. How stupid are you? But they like bash him in the head with the TV, and somehow he's still standing.
Yeah, he's just like, fight through the pain, ignore it.
So he does
even though
manage to
TV.
Take them all down, but he takes a lot of hits in the process of taking down. Like, later Batman wouldn't even have like had to touch these guys. He would have just thrown a few batarangs and called it a day.
yeah, pretty much.
But this is when like it shows the police have gotten reports of Batman, and they have like these different sketches in the background where one of them's like the giant bat that looks like Man-Bat. And then a few other like alternate costumes. What is it? Flass is all beat up, and he's like, "Oh, Batman beat me up, guys. That's what happened."
Yeah, I love his fake story. He's like, "Flass, tell us what happened." He's like, "I was taking down 12 drug dealers, right. And the Batman just happened to show up, and they all just happened to have their guns because I was being real polite to all those drug dealers."
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, I hadn't disarmed these 3 guys yet."
Yeah. He's like, I slipped on all that cocaine that fell out of my pocket because it had been planted there. And it's just like, man, you are full of shit.
Yeah, he is the worst. And Gordon knows that he's totally like
his
taking a payout
expression.
Like he was there, like it shows he was there taking a payout to look the other way as these guys are like handing bricks of cocaine back and forth.
Yeah.
That was a pretty cartoonish but amazing scene. So it keeps doing the go back and forth Batman Gordon thing, which is actually one of the things that works really well in this book. So we switch to like kind of the aristocrats of Gotham that kind of run everything behind the scenes, and they're like, yeah, we don't care. Batman's taking down all these guys we hate. And then, of course, he immediately breaks into their party and starts like saying, yeah, none of you guys are safe either. Bye.
Yeah. I thought this was so like, it was simultaneously really stupid, but also really cool. Yeah. When he's like, ladies and gentlemen, I could almost imagine like, ladies and gentlemen, you have eaten well, and then like puts the lid on the fire thing, and I'm just like, that's really dumb, but also like it's kind of like it's quite cool as well. It's really Batman to just be like so theatrical and so over the top about like literally just like a 2-sentence message, and it's just it's really, really good.
Yeah,
and like the dinner people are so gross.
Oh,
like,
I know.
The drawing on them is so like there's one guy like in the corner of one of the panels who's like slumped over, and he's all like wrinkly and old and has like a billion liver spots and just like a napkin
and like in. Food like, all over his, like he's like being fed like a baby because he's like this old decrepit politician or something.
Oh, it's just like it's so gross.
Yeah.
But that is a really cool scene. I really like it.
And then of course, because he finally messed with the wrong people, they're trying to entrap Batman basically by having all these fake like muggings where it's all cops everywhere, and he's just like, how stupid do they think I am? He's just watching them from the alley.
Yeah.
You find out, he's messing with higher up, more like higher and higher up people. It introduces Harvey Dent, which I thought was pretty cool. I forgot he was introduced in this book because it'd been so long since I read it.
See, I thought it was cool that they introduced Harvey Dent, but I feel like he just doesn't do anything else other than kind of just be like, hello, it's me, Harvey Dent.
Right. I think the only reason I like it is because, from what I remember, and it's been a while since I've read the Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale stuff, like the Long Halloween, it feels like they took that version of Harvey Dent and ran with it. And maybe that's why I like this version so much, is because I'm remembering him from those books. Because you're right, he really isn't in this much. It's like Gordon's in there going, well, maybe this guy's Batman, like, or maybe it's Bruce Wayne. Like, he's already on to Bruce Wayne. Like, this is only 2 issues in, and he's already like,
immediately,
it's probably Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And then you find out,
someone's like, what about Harvey Dent? And James is just like, but what about Bruce Wayne? Huh?
Exactly.
Did you?
So you find out Batman and Harvey are already like pretty close, which like I was kind of surprised they introduced that dynamic so soon. But I guess at this point, he's like the one guy that's in the DA's office that's actually like pushing back against the corruption. And he's like, well, I don't know if I can trust this Gordon guy yet, but this Dent guy seems on the level. Nothing could possibly go wrong with our friendship.
He let me hide behind his desk. He must be a good guy.
So Batman...
Only true friends let you do that.
So we see Gordon trying to stop a runaway truck where a guy has had a heart attack in a giant truck that's about to plow into a homeless lady, and Batman saves her because he can't. So that's when Gordon's like, well, maybe this Batman guy is not so bad after all. Which is kind of a contrived scene, but it's like they needed a scene to get to that point because, like, by the end, Gordon has to have come around on him. Like, otherwise, the dynamic hasn't really been set up.
Yeah, like it was a bit sort of like, oh look, there's an old woman. Oh, the truck's out of control. I wonder when Batman's going to come in and save her. But yeah, like they needed their moment so that Jim could progress from like, we're going to take down the Batman to, oh, maybe Batman's not such a bad guy after all, kind of thing. So like it was, and it was like a good moment. It was a good moment.
But then it goes to that, it kind of was recreated in Dark Knight Returns. Was that the second Nolan movie? The Joker one. Or no.
The Dark Knight Rises.
No.
The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight. Okay, you got me.
Yeah. It was just The Dark Knight.
And much as people really love those movies, I've seen the first one, I think 1.5 times. The second one maybe twice, and the third one once about a year after it finally came out on video. And I was like, I guess I should watch the third one.
No, I have to be honest. I saw The Dark Knight like when it was out in the theaters, and I really, really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me like another 3 years to see the first one, and I think I saw the third one when it came out. I think I only saw it once, but whereas I saw the second one, like I've seen it like 4 times because I really enjoyed it. But the two on the other side compared to the one in the middle is
just not there.
It's just not there. Yeah.
So like the scene in that at the end of the movie where they got him cornered in a building, like that is pretty much lifted right from this book, which is like
no, I distinctly remember while reading this, I was like, I've seen a movie of this.
Yeah.
I've seen a movie of this scene before.
Yeah, all the cops have him surrounded. There's this a panel of him, like he gets shot in the leg. He's running towards the camera, and this is the panel he looks the most Adam Westy in, which I appreciated.
Oh yeah,
because to be fair,
definitely.
I don't know if we've said his suit is like the Adam West suit essentially at this point.
Oh yeah,
like there's no armor. It's all cloth. There's like. It's just like him and his pajamas. Like they even make a reference at some point about Alfred saying, "Do you want me to get your tights?"
Give me your tights. Yeah. So I kind of like that because it almost like draws a little bit of attention to the fact that like all of these people in this like kind of superhero universe are really powerful, really intelligent and strong, and do all these great things. But they are still kind of wearing tights.
Yeah.
Like they are still wearing skin tight clothes to fight crime. And it's like, that's kind of ridiculous.
They do mention Superman is active at this point a couple times.
Yes.
Which I don't know where those other origins that were, when they were redoing all the origins. And then I think Batman may have been the last out of the big three, Superman, Wonder Woman, and then they did this one. So that would explain why they would reference that Superman is active, because they're like, that guy in Metropolis, See what we did there?
I hear he's pretty super.
They never actually say Superman, I don't think. I think they just always keep saying that guy in Metropolis.
That guy in Metropolis, yeah. It was kind of one of those things where it's like in zombie movies, they never say the word zombie.
Mm-hmm. So annoying.
Even though
so annoying.
Yeah, and even
I
though
hate it so
everyone
much.
knows
Stop doing it.
And it's like, here come the walkers. And it's like, dude, come on.
Hey, did you know though? We are the Walking Dead. See what we did?
Oh my god.
I bet I blew your mind with that.
Jesus, I quite enjoy The Walking Dead, but man, that scene, like when I first read it, I was just like, are you fucking serious? Are you actually shitting me right now? Like, what the hell? Come on.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact is, like, I'm sorry, just immediately after that, everyone's like, oh yeah, Rick, you're totally right. We are The Walking Dead. And no one at any point is like, shut up, you idiot. What are you, like 13? Shut up. Everyone's just like, yeah, you're totally right.
I have mixed feelings about The Walking Dead.
Anyway, Batman.
Yes, so we leave issue 2 with Batman surrounded by the police, all of which, except Gordon, want to basically murder him. They hate him so much at this point.
Yeah. The last page on this issue, I was just like, what the hell? Because he's like, don't what's the name of the SWAT team guy? It's like Brant or something like that. Brandon. Yeah, and so Jim's like, you can't let Brandon. Oh no! And this helicopter flies over, and I was like, oh okay, cool. And they blow the building up.
Right.
Like they just drop a bomb on the building, and I'm just like, what? This is an inner city apartment building.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, admittedly, it's empty, but still. Like,
no, they're like, well, it was marked for demolition, so let's just drop a bomb on top of it.
Just drop a bomb on it anyway. But of course, it is Gotham.
True.
It is Gotham, so it's that stuff probably happens all the time.
Well, they needed it to be rubble so that he could be hiding in the rubble.
Yeah, true.
He also, for some reason, had what was it? He had something in his utility belt that just like sparks and thermite, and it just burns the crap out of. Like his utility belt's just gone. Like for this scene, just to make it harder for him to get out of this, because otherwise he'd just be like throwing batarangs at everybody. So he has like 3 or 4 darts that knock people out. And that's about it. Like, and a lockpick, I think, is like the only thing that were like hidden in his gloves. So
yeah, I'd say like that first kind of page of that issue, where he's like trying to get into the metal hatch, and he's like, "Oh, but luckily I've got one lockpick," and just immediately gets inside. I don't know. For some reason, that bit bothered me because I'm like, no. You have like it takes a little bit of time to pick a lockpick, let alone when everything is on fire around you and the building's like blowing up.
I also like how it says danger electricity 80,000 watts, and he's like, "I sure hope this isn't accurate."
And just like open the hatch, I'm just fried Batman inside, and I'm like, well,
could have been a very short
warning
book.
Labels are accurate.
Yeah. So then we actually get introduced to, I mean, Selina's been in it, but they're like, she's going to be Catwoman. They kind of start cutting back to her a little bit. She lives in an apartment with about 100 cats, and that younger girl from the earlier in the story, basically just her being like, I'm tired of all this garbage, and if Batman can do it, I can do it. But that's kind of sprinkled throughout this issue, I think. And they don't get too into it.
Yeah, but I did kind of like that, and this kind of comes up later, I think, in issue 4, where like she starts doing stuff in like an attempt to kind of get recognition for herself, and then when it gets attributed to the Batman, she gets really annoyed about that, and so she she escalates things, and I kind of like that relationship where it's like Batman causes his villains kind of thing.
That's always the way it is with him.
Yeah. So I was really on board with that, and I was like, yeah, that's great. Like that's really cool that she's like, you know what? Fuck the news. Oh, I'm Catwoman. I'm fucking Batman.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, Batman's assistant. You know that lady.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, come on.
Oh man. So yeah, they chase him around in that like now falling apart building for a while. So this one's more like action heavy, so there's not as much to cover really. It's like
there's a lot of dancing around and like helicopters and stuff, and there's a cat and he uses some gadgets and takes out some guys, and yeah, he's basically just like a massive badass, and there's a whole bunch of really cool action scenes, and yeah, it's really like I thought it was really fun. I really enjoyed it.
It builds to the device that attracts all the bats from the Batcave to him, and basically he's like, I'm killing time until all these bats get here to give me cover so that I can run away. Like that is kind of the crux of this issue, and so it kind of just crescendos. Like he's just kind of surviving until all these bats show up, and then there's this huge swarm of bats that just show up at the end, and everyone's freaking out because there's, of course, it's Gotham, it's a big city, so all these lollygaggers just standing around outside hey, what are the police doing in there, trying to shoot some guy? Cool.
Just another Saturday morning in Gotham.
This is also, I think, the issue where it gets into Gordon and his partner. This subplot that I forgot about, and I'm like, I didn't like this the first time around. Where
it's just not really that.
Where they're like, well, Gordon can't be perfect, so they basically, him and his partner start kind of flirting, and then he's like, no, just think of her as a cop, and then they start calling each other by their first names, and then they get caught kissing in the rain. Coffee. Oh god, they had coffee. Worst
coffee,
mistake.
I know, just like the sluttiest of all the drinks.
Yes. Well, you've seen Luke Cage. That can have some connotations. Oh.
I actually haven't seen Luke Cage.
Oh, okay.
No, I haven't seen Luke Cage or Daredevil or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I have watched 3 seasons of Arrow and the first 2 seasons of Flash.
Okay. We haven't.
I really enjoyed Flash. Arrow existed.
Okay. But you watched 3 seasons of it?
Well, because the first season, like, I'd heard the second season was really good.
Okay.
So I watched the first season so that I could watch the second season, and the second season was really good, and I really enjoyed it. But then the third season was absolute garbage. I cannot believe how bad it was compared to the second season. It was like someone was like, "Hey, you know everything that was really bad about the second season? Let's just take all of that and put it in another season,
sold,
and then just put more of it in there."
Yeah.
And someone was like, "You mean more action and superhero conflicts?" And someone's like, "Nah. More drama, more soap opera."
Yeah.
And it's just like, cool.
The padding.
Shoot people with arrows,
right.
Please.
Doesn't he not even call himself Green Arrow for like
no, he
3
doesn't.
seasons?
The show really annoys me.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Gordon kisses Essen, and then I kind of liked afterwards. Like we first get we get our first little glimpse of Catwoman, and then we have Gordon like basically sitting at home. And I kind of like his thought process where he's like, I can't believe Gotham is such a terrible place. And then he kind of catches himself and he's like, you know what? Actually, it was totally my own fault. It was 100% on me. Like, it was like, it has nothing to do with Batman or Gotham or Loeb or Flash or anyone like that. This is entirely my own fault. And I have to own up to that mistake at some point. And I really liked that, because I think, like, too often in these kinds of stories, like, it can kind of come back to like, oh, I was influenced by the femme fatale, or you know, the crappiness of the city has influenced me. But in this case, he's just like, nah, you know what? I made a really terrible mistake, and I'm gonna have to deal with that one day. And I was like, yeah, good on you for realizing that you have fucked up here.
Yeah, no, I think I was, when I said earlier I didn't like it, I think I was a little too hard. I don't like that the character does that, because I like the character and he's doing something terrible. So it's not that it's like a bad subplot. It's more just you're going, no, don't do this. What is wrong with you?
Jim, I love you. Don't do that. Yeah.
And I think they handled it pretty well, because, you know, Batman's escaped. He's still trying to track him down. You know, we're going through that whole subplot. He kind of gets kind of an in, because they get this drug dealer guy who's willing to talk, but they keep trying to murder him, of course, because there's all these mob ties and stuff now at this point. But when they try, this is actually what really sold me on Gordon's character. When they blackmail him or attempt to blackmail him, he just goes to his wife and is like, I'm a piece of shit, and here's what I did.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. Like, just that, like that, and the fact that it didn't become this whole thing where he tried to cover it up and then had to confess it, and then like they had this whole drama kind of thing. It was just like the one panel where she's like, yeah, I know, fuck off.
Yeah.
And just like, and that was
so
it.
Good.
It was like, and it just like, and it says like so much about him, and it says so much about her, and so much about the relationship, that she's just like, yeah, I know.
Yep.
Don't ever call me ever again. And then it's just like, oh, yes, Barbara, you sweet, sweet woman.
Yeah.
So good.
She's in like 3 panels, and she's the best character in the whole book. I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah.
She's got that rad baby shirt. I mean,
yeah. The story kind of jumps along quite a bit in time at this point as well.
Yeah, it speeds up a lot at the later half.
At the end, yeah. And so you get like, you know, a few more attempts on the drug dealer's life, skeevers, and then like Jim's baby is born. Selena Kyle gets like more frustrated and decides to like,
she's like, I'm gonna scratch that dude's face, then people will know it was me. Batman doesn't have claws, I have claws, they'll know it's me, right? And that's when they call her,
because I'm a cat.
Yeah, that's when someone calls her Batman's assistant, and she's like, no.
Yeah.
And she does claw the crap out of Roman's face, which it does show him with like bandages all over his face. Which that dynamic works pretty well in the Jeff Loeb Tim Sale stuff too. Like that comes back. Like they do a lot. Like they springboard a lot off this book.
Yeah. That whole thing between Carmine Falcone and Catwoman and like the scratches on his face. Like I have read stuff from like Batman stuff from like 1 year ago or like 2 years ago, and it's still being brought up.
Wow.
Like, it's still like a thing between the two of them where he's like, I'm gonna pay you back for scratching my face all those years ago. Like, it's kind of transcended like a personal injury, and it's now like a genuine insult between the two of them. And yeah, so it's like it's really cool to like see like the origin of that kind of stuff, especially for me because I've never read this before, and so it's like, oh, that's where this came from.
Yeah. So it all kind of culminates in they realize they can't really get to Gordon any other way, so of course they kidnap his wife and kid, who's a baby.
The baby.
And then one of the guys he thinks is one of the mobsters is actually Bruce Wayne. Like, not even as Batman. He's just like in his biker gear again for some reason.
Yeah.
And he ends up saving the baby. Gordon has jumped down to try and catch him too. And then they're in the mud and Gordon doesn't have his glasses. And he's like, oh, you're a hero, but he can't tell who it is. So,
ooh, thank goodness.
And then you find out Loeb was taken down and they've promoted Gordon. And then it just kind of ends. They've set up all this stuff and are like, okay, bye. That was your 4 issues.
Yep. Boop. Come back next month for something else.
Which is the one frustrating thing where you're like, oh, I forgot this wasn't like a standalone series. I totally forgot about that. I'm like, where's all the parts where all this other stuff happens? I'm like, oh, that was later. Like, I forgot.
Yeah. But it was kind of a two-edged sword, I think, for me, where like on the one hand I was like, yeah, that was really cool, and like I really enjoyed that they kind of left it open as like Loeb, like he wasn't taken down, like he wasn't arrested, but he's just like under investigation, and Gordon isn't the commissioner, he's now just
he's captain.
Captain.
Yeah.
And and Batman's only just starting to work with him. But then at the same time, I did kind of want it to keep going.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want a bit more of a resolution for some of this stuff, but I guess that's kind of a testament to how much I enjoyed it. I was like, no, I want the story to keep going.
I thought this was the one where it ends with him like giving him the bat signal, and I was so happy it wasn't by the time I was done reading it, because it's like that would have been way too much to incorporate in that last part, because it's like they barely trust each other at this point,
Yeah, like they're only just about to like formally meet for the first time.
Yeah.
And like in literally the last page, like the last what is it, like 2 panels?
Right. And he mentions
3 panels.
They're like, oh, there's this guy who's poisoning the water and his name is the Joker.
The Joker.
So I don't know, because I haven't read past this, how did they introduce the Joker in this version of Batman? I don't remember. I don't know if I've read those ones ever.
If I recall, there's actually another trade after this one called like Last Laugh or something like that, and that covers that first.
But
Joker.
In this continuity,
yes, it's designed to take place after year 1.
Isn't there? There's a year 2 as well, but I don't know if I've read that.
I think so, yeah, but I've never read it either, obviously.
Yeah, so that's the problem. This is where I come into issues with DC, Marvel, like any character that's been running this long. Even this is canonically not the origin anymore. You were saying, like,
no, it's not. It's been superseded by 0 Year, which is the New 52 origin, which I believe was written by Scott Snyder, I believe it was. And so that was basically just like an update of essentially year 1. Mm-hmm. It was essentially a rewrite of this story.
Why would you do that? This one is so good.
Because it's New 52, and you gotta keep it fresh. Gotta get the new readers in. Yeah, but I as I was saying, I've never read it. So I can't attest to whether or not it's good or bad. By all accounts, fantastic.
Okay.
Fair enough. And maybe we'll go back after, we'll do something symbolic, like after, a year of podcast, we'll go back and we'll have a look at 0 Year, which is the modern counterpoint to our first review, and we'll have a look at that. But by all accounts, it's very good.
If we have fans by then, they need to remind us to do that.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's Batman 0 year. What are your
No, year one.
What are your Oh, year one. Fuck, God damn it, DC, damn it.
So like I said, I was prepared to go back and not like this very much because Frank Miller has become such a crazy person in the last like 10 years.
So crazy. And
I mean, if you don't
weird.
believe me, just remember that Dark Knight Returns 3 is called The Master Race, and I think that's all I need to say about that. Oh my
God, yeah. That thing has been coming out since November 2015 and it's still going. Oh my God. Like, it just takes so long to come out. I cannot believe when I get emails from my local comic book shop saying like, "Hey guys, issue 7 of Dark Knight 3 The Master Race is out this week." And I'm like, Jesus, I thought that thing finished like 6 months ago. It's crazy.
See, I think okay, so I'm trying to think back, and they did All-Star Superman, which I do want to cover, which I remember being fantastic. And then they did All-Star Batman, and I believe it was Frank Miller again, and I went, awesome. This is going to be great, because this is like the Batman and Robin dynamic, and it is the worst comic. That is the one where he's like, I'm the goddamn Batman.
Yes, yeah, and it's something like, what are you, some kind of retard? It's so bad.
God, I hate that.
That
makes me so mad.
I really want to review that one too.
It's so bad. I mean, I guess we can't only read good stuff for this.
Yeah,
and that's what turned me off to Frank Miller. I was so hyped for Frank Miller until I read that first issue.
And what was the one as Holy Terror? It was like about like a jihad and like someone trying to stop all these Islamic terrorists. And apparently, it's like super racist.
That doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah. It's just like it is really weird to compare some of Frank Miller's like really early, quite groundbreaking and trend-setting stuff, and then compare it to like what he does now, where he's basically just like, I'm goddamn Frank Miller, I can do whatever I want, and it's like, no, you can't. No, you actually can't.
You actually cannot do that.
You can't just do whatever you want. There are limits to good taste.
Yes, I agree. So classic Frank Miller holds up, I'm going to say, at least in Batman Year One. I am very curious to see his run on Daredevil because it is what made Daredevil what it is, and I've never read it. Maybe we will visit that in the future. Final thoughts on Batman Year One?
I as we were just discussing, classic Frank Miller, great. Future Frank Miller, less so. But in this case, I quite wholeheartedly actually recommend this. Like, it's not like amazingly deep. Like, it's not like I walked away from it and thought like, wow, that's really made me think about a lot of issues that I wouldn't have normally thought of. And it hasn't exactly redefined the way I see Batman. But holy shit, it's a really good story, and it's a good, fun story that I take pleasure in reading. And yeah, honestly, if I owned a copy, I'd probably go back and I'd read it again. If I just had a copy sitting on my shelf, I'd probably be like, oh yeah, Year One, I really enjoyed that, and I would easily read it again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would give it a high recommendation, especially if you are looking to get into Batman and be like, I want to understand the origin story of Batman.
Yeah.
Other than his parents get shot in an alley, which everyone knows.
It does go there, but very, very briefly. Like,
yeah, I appreciated that it did not open with happy young Bruce Wayne with his parents, then they get shot and he is very sad. It just immediately jumps into Bruce Wayne come back to Gotham and he wants to be Batman. I was like, yeah.
And he's already trained, so you don't have a training montage other than him karate chopping a brick wall.
And a tree.
And a tree. What did that tree do to him?
In half.
Yes, in half. Yeah, I agree. I would recommend this. This is one, like, a friend of mine has a store, like a game store, but he also does comics. And when people are, like, in there, you know, and we're chatting about comics, and when people are like, can you recommend a good one? I'm happy to say I can recommend this now without going, well, I haven't read it in 10 years, but I remember it being good. Because that's kind of what I've done in the past.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of old stuff where you're like, I recall this being good, but it's been a while, so
but I would definitely
I'm gonna be
recommend...
hesitant here.
I mean, you are getting in. You know what you're getting into. It's an origin story, but if you want to see what all of the origin stories of him have played off of since the 80s, this is where it started.
A definite recommend, I would say.
So I think that will wrap it up for our Batman Year 1 discussion. Hopefully I've remembered to edit out the former wrap-up. You can follow us on Twitter. We both are pretty active on there. My account is Spambot.
And yeah, I am at Mr. K_Bennett. And yeah, I'm really active on Twitter. I didn't used to be. I've actually only been on Twitter for like a year or something like that. But tweet at me and be like, hey, this is what I think about Batman, or hey, this is what I think about whatever. And yeah, I will tweet your ass off until you are at replying me and just being like, just don't talk to me anymore. Please stop.
You need to stop. Seek help, please.
You need to stop tagging me in things.
So until next time,
I'm just going to real quickly just like plug my other podcast.
Oh yeah, go for it.
If you wanna listen to my dulcet tones anymore, you can actually find me on another podcast, For Crits and Giggles. We're a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons podcast. Really unique idea.
I don't think there's any of those out there. Not that I've heard of.
I was really surprised. There's basically no one doing them, which I think we're going to start a trend, which I think is quite exciting.
Yeah.
Because we're quite ahead of the curve. We play Dungeons and Dragons in a custom world that I've made. So you can follow us on Twitter. We're at 4CNG Podcast, and I think we've just released episode 38. Check it out. We got a good story going.
Well, thank you for listening. So tune in next week, and we will be covering another comic. Follow us on Twitter like we mentioned, and you will know what it is.
Bye. Hope you enjoyed it.